South Carolina Republicans gave Donald Trump another primary win in Nikki Haley's home state, South Carolina, this weekend. Florida voters have another few weeks to our presidential primary. That's March 19th. And if you are not registered to vote in that, too late. The deadline came and went this week. The supervisor of elections in Broward County is Joe Scott, right here to crunch some of those numbers, which includes some interesting party switches. Welcome, Joe. Welcome to the table.
Good morning, Glenna. Thanks for having me.
Good morning. So the party switch, well, first of all, Broward County is the most Democratic county in the state.
Right.
And 800 or so people who were Democrats switched to become Republican Party members in Broward County.
Yeah, so that number actually went up a little bit since that story came out.
Oh, you bring the latest numbers.
So it ended up
being,
so we ended up having about 2,500 people switch to Republican since January 1st, between January 1st and the deadline that just passed on Tuesday.
All right, so I know the Republican Party of Florida has made a giant effort over the past 2 years to bulk up the numbers. Statewide, I think, and I don't have the latest numbers in front of me, but 700,000 to 800,000 more Republicans statewide than Democrats. But in the most Democratic county of the state, why would that happen? What are those former Democrats thinking?
Yeah, no, so it's interesting because, so one thing about Florida is because we are a closed primary state, you do have to be registered. In other places, what we did see through this primary season is that, excuse me, there were folks who, you know, would come out who were registered as independent, registered as no party affiliation, as we call it here in Florida, and they would go be able to vote. So in other states, they have the rules allow people from different parties to still vote.
Iowa and New Hampshire are
Right.
two of those, and we were there, you know, and that was happening a lot.
Yes. Yeah. So here in Florida, you actually have to make that switch before the deadline, which is 29 days before the election. So I would encourage people not to read too much into this as if there's some kind of shift happening within Broward County, right?
Going.
But it is, you know, 2,500 people moving to Republican represents about 1% of the registered Republicans in Broward County.
But then I am surprised by that.
Yeah.
Should I be? Is that surprising to you?
It is a little bit. That it ended up being so many people right there at the end. And honestly, 2,500, even though it's only 1% of the total Republicans, you know, if you look at even with the Iowa caucuses, you only saw about 15% turnout, right? Mm-hmm. So if we end up with 15% turnout, then that could end up being somewhere in the neighborhood of 7% of the voters, assuming these people who bothered to change their party here at the last second are probably more likely than most to actually vote.
And we can't ascribe what they're thinking. We don't know why they're voting, who they're voting for, or why they vote the way they do.
Sure.
But what might be interesting to see is if there is a change back afterwards. That'll be the telling.
That will be the real test, yeah.
So this is, you know, maybe a conspiracy going on here in Broward County. So let me talk about the primary coming up on March 19th.
Sure.
There is no Democratic primary for Florida.
Correct.
Because the Democrats have already chosen Joe Biden as their Florida winner.
Right. So the way that their process works, because they only had one candidate qualify, there's no primary.
So everyone going to the polls will be Republican voters, and Republicans will see a ballot with a lot of names on it, not just Donald Trump and Nikki Haley.
True.
Why are those ballots going to have people like Vivek Ramaswamy and there's like 6 other names?
Right. So there was actually a deadline that passed in November. So, you know, and I feel like we're probably going to get a lot of people asking this question. And the reason is that you hear it on the news. So the person will go out and make an announcement, I'm withdrawing from the race, right? That's not an official action. They need to actually file paperwork to have their name removed from the ballot. And a lot of these people didn't do that in time. They didn't meet the deadline.
So what happens if a Florida Republican goes in and votes for one of those people who has suspended his or her campaign? His campaign, there are no hers that have suspended.
You know, so we count the votes and we report the results. So ultimately, if you want to vote for one of those people who already withdrew and their name is on the ballot, you can vote for that person and it'll show in the results how many people voted for each of those folks. For most people, I wouldn't read too much into it because somebody who has announced that they are not part of the race anymore is probably not, a lot of people aren't going to vote for them. A lot of the voters who come out for these primaries, they do tend to be the more sophisticated voters. So they already are kind of paying attention. It's not as if they're looking at these names for the first time when they see the ballot, right? They already know who they're showing up to support, and a lot of the support will go to those candidates that are still contesting the election.
Yeah. For a minute, let's talk about the people who may not be that engaged, but who want to be engaged and who want to vote. Having your registration done it's too late for the presidential primary. You have to be registered. But to people who want to vote by mail, for instance, is there still time to get your vote by mail ballot to ask for one for the primary?
Absolutely. And, and it's something that everybody can do. It takes about 2 minutes on our website, browardvotes.gov.
And this is for any county too, Miami-Dade or Monroe as well.
So, so obviously my website would just be for Broward County, but Miami and Monroe County also have their own. But yes, you can go on, you can make a request your vote by mail ballot. You can actually request for all the elections happening this year. One thing that's important for folks to know, especially those 2,500 people who could be some of your viewers here, who switched, is that if you do want to vote in the Democratic primary in August, because in August there'll be a primary for other offices, so for members of Congress and state reps and state senators and those types of folks who will be on the ballot in August. If you want to participate in those partisan primaries, then you should, make sure you make that action happen sooner rather than later, because you'll have that same deadline 29 days before the election.
Right, and what I really want to hammer home is that the rules have changed, and now when you get you ask for a mail-in ballot and you get one, there's an expiration date to that request. So you have to keep requesting your vote by mail ballots.
Correct. So after the general election that happens in November, so in November of every even-numbered year, after that election, you basically would have to go back. So basically, if you think about the odd number years, January of an odd number year is a good time to think about going back and requesting all of your vote by mail ballots for that next upcoming election cycle.
Did you see in your office a real confusion or scramble by people who thought that they would be able to vote by mail with this switch?
We did have some calls. We had people who reached out to the office because they were used to getting their vote by mail like clockwork, and now they didn't get one for this upcoming election. So we did actually get some people reach out, and we had to notify them that, hey, you need to put in a new request. You have a request in. So that is something, and I expect that to be much more as we get closer to August. August and November, we'll see a lot more.
And we do a lot of work here to educate and inform and urge people to participate and vote, and so we appreciate all those outreach efforts.
Yeah, absolutely.
We were going to talk about the election bill that's coming up, but that's gone.
It is, it's gone.
What a difference a week makes.
Absolutely.
Joe Scott, thanks so much. Go ahead.
Oh, Glenna, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Great to have you, and you are definitely keeping in touch with us as we march toward next month and see what happens.
For sure.
All right, take care.
All right.
All right, South Florida's public health enemy #1 at the moment, measles. The outbreak growing this weekend. Addresses to use if you have questions right now, send them in, twisf@wplg.com. If you love Twitter, X, we are at WPLG Local 10. And we'll get some answers real time with one of South Florida's go-to infectious disease experts next.